We are officially starting the Christmas season with 30 of my favorite DIYs from years past. If you guys are new, my name's Liz, and let's jump into our first Christmas DIY.
For this DIY, I went to Home Depot and picked up 1x3 by 8-foot boards. I picked up 2 of these. Now, I will have all the dimensions in the description box below and on the screen so that you guys can screenshot it if you want to try to recreate this project. I'm going to take all those pieces that I just cut, and I have them in 2 different groupings, those 4 pieces at the top and then the 7 pieces on the bottom. I'm going to use a combination of some wood glue and some super glue wood glue to get these to hold together. I also would probably use some clamps that I didn't have at the moment to get these to stick together. I also took some big stir sticks on the back and then added some staples through the back, so that could also work if you want to try to get them to hold together a little bit quicker if you don't have the time to wait for the glue to set up to dry. So we are just going to glue those 4 pieces, like I said, that were on the top, just in that same pattern from biggest to smallest, and then you're going to glue your 7 pieces that are all the same size, all just in a row. Now for those 4 pieces, I had my husband do this for me. He cut it just by finding the middle and then going to each corner, so you're left with a little triangle. Now what could probably be a whole lot easier is just marking the triangle before you glue all the pieces together and cutting them down that way. But either way works as long as you are left with a triangle for your roof. You're also going to take some 1x2s and make a couple little roof pieces. I just left the ends square. You could also cut them at a 45-degree angle if you wanted, but I just left them in that square shape. And then you are also going to take some paint stir sticks to make a little barn door at the bottom, just cutting them at 45-degree angles. Again, all the measurements will be in the description box below. Now I'm going to take my 7 slats that we glued together, and I'm going to paint this with my Barn Red Dixie Belle chalk paint. If you ever hear me talk about Dixie Belle, they're always linked in my description box below. If you cannot find Waverly in your Walmarts, this is a really good alternative. I use this a lot, especially since I couldn't find Waverly for a long time, and I can find it now, but I still love Dixie Belle paint as well. So if you need an alternative, I will link it down below. You're also going to take your triangle roof piece, paint that with the Dixie Belle Barn Red, and then I mixed in some Waverly Antique wax while the paint was still wet, so it kind of blended together. And once it was dry, I also took the Waverly wax and went in between each slat to kind of define each of those pieces. And then once the paint on my barn itself was all dry, I'm also taking a small brush and going in between each slat with that Waverly wax and antique. Again, just to define each of these slats, as well as to make it look a little bit more rustic and distressed. I'm going to take our 2 roof pieces. I'm also going to paint those with my Waverly Wax and Antique, and I'm just using this just like a stain. I'm going to paint it on and then wipe off the excess. And for our barn door pieces, I'm going to use my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm going to give all of those a good coat. I also took my Waverly Wax and Antique and just kind of distressed all the barn door pieces a little bit. I just went around the edges, and I just wanted to give them a little bit more dimension so they weren't just that flat white look. Now I'm going to assemble my entire thing. So to attach my roof to the barn, I'm going to take a large paint stir stick, and I'm going to add some super glue wood glue to it, as well as some wood glue hot glue to the back, and then I'm going to put that in between right where the roof and the barn meet, and I'm going to hold that down there. I also took my staple gun and added some staples to it as well to add some extra reinforcement. And then I'm going to put my roof pieces on there, again just some super glue wood glue and some wood glue hot glue, and I'm just going to add those pieces to my roof. And I just make sure that the roof pieces line up directly with the sides and the top of the roof. And then I'll add my barn door. I'm just taking all of my pieces and just laying them out before I glue them all together. So I just made sure to evenly space the two side pieces, and then I added my roof piece on top. And then you can add in all of your middle pieces. Again, I just laid them all out before I glued them down. And I just used a combination of that super glue, wood glue, and my wood glue hot glue. It's the Gorilla Glue hot glue sticks. If you've never tried it, definitely check it out. You can get them on Amazon. I'll have them linked below, but they are perfect for DIYs like this. Now I wanted to add a Christmas wreath to my barn. So what I'm going to do is take some picks that I had, and I believe I got the majority of these from Hobby Lobby last year during Christmas, and as well as this little wreath form. I also got this from Hobby Lobby. And I just took all those sprigs that I cut off and added some hot glue, and I'm just going to glue these around in the same direction on the wreath. And I just added as many sprigs until I felt like it was full enough. And then I also have these red berries. I think that these are really fun because they're kind of crystallized, and I just cut a couple of these off and then put them down into the wreath. I added a little tack onto the front of my barn so that I could change out the wreath for every season. And I just added this wreath on top of it, and that is it for this DIY. I think this is so much fun. It is a little bit more of a complicated one, but if you're comfortable using wood and using power tools, then this one is perfect for you. I think it's just so much fun, and you can use the barn all year round. I'm going to take 2 tag signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. It doesn't have to be the summer ones. It can be really about anything. They always have these shapes out in signs for every season. And then I'm going to take this Dollar Tree vinyl paper, and it's this pretty buffalo check, which I thought was absolutely perfect. If you can't find this, you could also use buffalo check scrapbook paper, but I just thought this was perfect for this DIY, so I just stuck one of my tags down on top of my vinyl and then traced around it, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Once it's all cut out, I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing, and then I'm just going to stick my vinyl to the back of my sign. And then any excess that's left over, I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and trim up the ends. Now for my other tag sign, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in silver lining, and I just gave it probably about 2 good coats. I wanted to make sure everything was nice and covered up. Once that's drying, I'm going to take these little ice skates that I got from the Dollar Tree. They're really, really cute. They come in a pack of 2. But the only issue I had is that they are going opposite directions, and I wanted them to face the same way. So I'm going to have to flip one of them over onto the back. I wanted to make sure that the back was nice and flush to the sign. So I am removing one of the snowflakes from the ice skate so that I don't have it only hanging on by that piece, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to go through and paint both of the ice skates white. I just gave it 1 good coat of white Waverly chalk paint, and then I'm going to paint the snowflake and the blades of the skates in black. And again, because we're using the back portion of the other ice skate, I just painted the whole thing white and then the blades black, and then obviously I don't have a snowflake to worry about painting for that one. And then I'm just going to glue my ice skates together, again, making sure they're going the same way because, you know, you've painted the back of the other one. You're going to just hot glue them together, and I just kind of made sure that the holes at the top matched up to each other. And then I'm just going to hot glue the entire thing down to my sign. I'm going to take a piece of burlap ribbon, and I'm just going to hot glue this around the back,
making sure that I'm pulling nice and tight so that my ribbon has no bumps or waves at the front. Everything is nice and tight to the sign. And then I'm going to take a piece of some buffalo check ribbon, but I needed to make sure that it was smaller than the burlap ribbon that I just put down. So I did cut the buffalo check ribbon down a bit, and then I'm just going to hot glue this right on top of the burlap ribbon. Once that's on there, I'm going to assemble my two signs together. I just took some hot glue and I just placed this right on top of my buffalo check sign. Now I'm going to take a piece of twine for the bow at the top of the ice skate. I just wrapped some twine around my thumb and index finger, and then I'm just going to take an excess piece of twine around the middle, tie a double knot, and then hot glue the bow to the top of my ice skate. Now for the top of this sign, I am going to cut down some ribbon and I am going to make a big burlap bow. So the way that I do this, which there's probably an easier way, but this is just my take. I'm going to take a piece of ribbon and hot glue the ends together, making a loop. I'm going to do that twice, but the second one is going to be slightly smaller than the first. After I have those two loops, I'm going to cut another piece for the tails. I'm just going to fold the ribbon in half, kind of figure out how long I want my tails to be, and then I will cut that off, and then I will just layer everything together. The smallest loop on top, then the biggest loop in the middle, and the tails on the bottom. I'll take a piece of twine and I will just put that on top, wrap it around the back and tie a double knot and have the ribbon all squished up in the middle. Now again, just taking a couple pieces of some excess Christmas picks that I have, I'm just going to hot glue that to the middle, and then I will hot glue my bow right to the top, and that is it for this DIY. I had this unfinished sign that I actually got from Goodwill in a pack, but I know that this came from Joann's. So I'm just going to start by using my Waverly Wax and Antique to stain the frame portion and the back of the sign. Once that is all done, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm going to go over the entire middle with 2 good coats of paint. Next, I am going to take these paint stir sticks that came in a pack from Walmart. Now, my miter shears aren't quite strong enough to cut through these super easy, but they can cut through them enough where I can kind of bend it back and forth and snap it apart. So I'm going to cut this down into 4 separate pieces, each piece being smaller than the last piece. Once I've got all 4 of my pieces, I'm going to take some scrapbook paper that I got in a couple different packs from Hobby Lobby. Michael's also has some really good packs out. I was just there today and saw them and refrained from buying them until they're on sale, but they have some really cute packs there as well. Once I have my scrapbook paper out, all I'm going to do is trace my pieces out on my scrapbook paper, a different one for each piece. I'm going to take a glue stick and glue all 4 pieces of my scrapbook paper to my little paint stir stick pieces. Then I'm just going to line them up and hot glue them down in my sign. I purposely made them all a little bit crooked and just hot glued them all down. And then I also made a simple bow using some Dollar Tree gold satin ribbon, added a silver jingle bell to the middle of my bow. Hot glued a little piece of a wood stem down to the bottom of my tree, and that is it for this DIY.
You are going to cut out 5 pieces of wood. One is going to be a base that's a little over 11 inches long. You are going to cut out triangles, all sorts of different shapes and sizes, whatever your heart desires, however big that you want them to be. I'm going to start painting them. So for one of the trees, I'm going to paint it with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and you're going to paint the front, the back, the sides. You don't need to paint the bottom because that's going to be covered up anyways, or you're going to be gluing it down to your base, so you don't really need to do that. For another tree, I used my Dixie Belle Vintage Duck Egg, and I wanted this to look multi-dimensional, so I had that paint on there while that paint was still wet. I went in with my Waverly chalk paint in Celery, and I brushed those together. I also went in with my Elephant colored chalk paint from Waverly, and I mixed those together, so I really wanted it to have a streaky look to it. And then for one of my other trees, I painted it with my Waverly chalk paint in Elephant, and then did kind of that same technique as before, just with white chalk paint. And then for my other tree, I painted with my Waverly chalk paint in Celery, and then again went over it with a little bit of that gray and white and just kind of blended those all together. For the base, I'm going to use my Waverly Wax in Antique, and I just use this like a stain. I'm going to apply it and then remove the excess with a paper towel. I did distress all of my trees using my Waverly Wax and Antique as well, just on a chip brush and lightly going over it with a dry brushing technique over the entire front, the sides, the back, the entire thing. And then I am going to be doing a little bit of Couture on all of my trees. So I'm going to take my surface wax that I purchased from Couture, and on a paper towel, I'm just going to rub that wax on there. This is going to help prevent bleeding. Since we are using wood, it's a porous surface, and I personally find that the wax helps me a ton when it comes to bleeding and my projects. So I'm going to start out by taking this pattern Couture transfer right here. I'm going to use the one with the leaves and the holly and the berries, but I'm just going to do the entire thing in this sage color, I believe that it's called. I will have it listed down in the description box below, so if you're looking for this specific color, you can find it, but I believe that it's called Sage. And I'm just going to take my squeegee and put the chalk paste over the entire transfer. Once I've got it completely covered, I'm going to lift that up and then lay it back down to finish the top portion of the tree. And then I will cover that with some more chalk paste and lift that up, set it to the side to dry. For another one of my trees, I'm going to use this Oh Holy Night transfer. It's the music sheet, and I think this is so much fun. I love the music sheet look. I think it's really adorable, and I'm just going to put it on one of my small trees. I just put the other trees on the side so that it would hold the transfer up and I wouldn't have it moving around anywhere. So I just use my white chalk paste to go over the music sheet onto my green tree. And then I am going to use this pack of transfers that has a whole bunch of different Christmas words: blessed, rejoice, comfort, there's peace, Noel, all those fun Christmassy words. And I put that on my gray tree with the word joy and my black chalk paste. And then for this gray tree as well, I wanted to do some polka dots. So I'm just taking some white chalk paint, the back of my paintbrush, and I'm just adding polka dots all over the entire tree. Now for my last tree, I'm going to have this one in the front, so I wanted it to be, a little more detail than the rest of the trees, or, a little bit different than the rest of them. So I'm going to take some of this ribbon that I had. I'm going to wrap this around my tree just by hot gluing it in the back. And then I'm going to take the word peace from that Couture pack. I'm going to use my velvet chalk paste on top of it. And then I'll just remove that to reveal the word peace. I'm going to take some of this greenery that I got, I believe, from Hobby Lobby. I just cut a couple pieces off, hot gluing it down on top of the ribbon. I'm going to take some twine, tie it into a super simple shoelace bow. My favorite. If you've been watching my channel for a while, I'm a pro at these by now because it's the kind of bows that I know how to make really well. I just stick that right down on top of the greenery. And then I have these little snowflakes that came from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to use the furniture pens that they have. They're almost like a stain in a pen from the Dollar Tree. They worked really well for this project, and I just painted 2
of those snowflakes in that, and then I am going to glue them on top of the tree, one in the bottom corner, one on the top side, and I think that looks really cute together. And then I'm just going to go ahead and assemble all of my trees on top of my base. I just use that super glue wood glue that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I just glue all those down, and that's it for this DIY. I think this turned out so cute. I think this would be adorable with a ton of trees if you did like 10 or so of these triangles and made like a big tree, you know, forest. I think it would look really cute together, but I'm loving this DIY and how it turned out. I grabbed one of these paper trees from Hobby Lobby. It was 50% off at the time that I purchased it. There's a couple different options that you could do. You could buy one of those, or you could always just buy one of the styrofoam shaped cones that, you know, look like trees. That would work as well. The first thing that you're going to do is grab some ribbon. I chose 3 different kind of styles of ribbon or different colors. A glittery gold one, a nice green one, and then a plaid green one as well. Whatever colors you want to do works. You want to make sure though that all of your ribbon is the same size. At least that's how I prefer it. You could obviously do this however you want to do it. I just chose to make all of my ribbon 1.5 inches so that they were all nice and cohesive. Now I'm just going to start out by cutting about 7-inch strips for each of my ribbon, and I didn't really count how many strips I was cutting. If I had to guess, I would probably say 7 strips each to begin with. You're going to need a lot more than that, but I didn't want to cut out way more than I needed and then have a whole bunch of strips left over. So I just kind of eyeballed it at first and then gradually cut more pieces of ribbon as I needed it. Now you're going to take your ribbon strips, you're going to fold them in half, and you are going to glue the tops together. I do this for all of my pieces. You could do all this at one time or do it as you are gluing down each piece to your tree form. All you're going to do is put your ribbon towards the bottom, leave a little bit of overhang so you can't really see that bottom portion, and then hot glue it down. And then just do a pattern, whatever pattern you want. I just, you know, did the 3 colors or the 3 different types of ribbon in a pattern, and I just went around all of the bottom portion of my tree. And then on my second row, I'm going to put my ribbon down right on top of 2 pieces of ribbon on the first row, right in the middle. It's going to cover up that gap in between the other 2 pieces of ribbon, so you're not going to see the brown underneath. And I like to have my ribbon stagger rather than up the entire tree. It's all just in one perfect line. This is going to stagger your ribbon, and that's just how I prefer it. Obviously, you can do it exactly how you want it. I like to have my ribbon staggered, and then it also helps cover up those gaps in between each piece of ribbon. And I'm just going to do this all the way at my tree. This exact same thing, this exact same pattern, all the way up. If I run out of ribbon strips, I'm just going to cut some more, hot glue them together, and then continuing to hot glue them to my tree form. And sometimes my patterns didn't work out perfectly. I had, patterns out of order, and that's totally okay. It does not have to be perfect by any means. It doesn't have to be the perfect pattern. It doesn't have to go the exact perfect way. I did it a little bit more messy than I normally do, and I liked it that way. So however you do it, it'll look great. And then for a finishing touch, I just took one of these stars that I got at Hobby Lobby in a pack of their mini ornaments, and I just stuck this right on top, and that's it for this DIY.
I took a scrap piece of wood. I cut it down to a little less than 7.5 inches by a little over 11 inches tall. And you're just going to cut some angles at the top, make it into the shape of a house. And then I have some 1 inch by 1 inch square wood pieces that we cut out with my laser machine. Although you could probably find these at really any kind of craft store. But if it is something that you're interested and you would like to see them on my website, let me know, because that's definitely something we could do. So I just started drawing out a grid to try to make sure that all of my squares were nice and evenly spaced out and all aligned perfectly, or as perfect as I could possibly get them. So I just did some measuring. There really wasn't any sort of like formula I went by. I just put my squares down, drew lines, and then tried to make sure that they all evenly matched up. And then I also used this ruler from the Dollar Tree to make sure everything was straight and aligned together as well. To glue all of my wood pieces down, I just used the super glue wood glue that you can find at the Dollar Tree. In total, I used 20 squares. And then I also have these half beads that you can purchase off of Amazon. They're linked in my Amazon store. And I'm just using some glue to attach these to the front of every square. So for this project, I was going for an apothecary style looking house with the drawer pulls. Obviously, there aren't drawers, but we're going to mimic what they look like. For the roof of the house, I just took some paint stir sticks. I did cut 2 of the ends at an angle where they would meet at the top of the house. You could just have them lay flat and not worry about the angle, but I decided to go the angle route, and I just glued those together and made sure that the roof was in the middle of the house. Once the glue is all dry, I'm going to go in with my Beryl Brown stain, and I'm going to give the entire thing a good coat of that front, back, sides, bottom. The entire thing will be covered in this stain. Once that is dry, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white, and on a chip brush, we are going to dry brush the entire thing. Now, I started off light hand. I didn't want it to be too much too fast, so I just gradually built up the paint until I had it the way that I liked it. And you are just going to dip your brush in the paint, dab off the majority of it, and then go and dry brush your piece. So eventually you'll have it looking very rustic and very farmhouse, and I think this is so cute. This isn't necessarily a piece that you have to only have during Christmas time. I feel like this is a piece that you could have up all year if you wanted, but I just think that it looks so beautiful paired with my Christmas decor. I took these tag signs that I found at the Dollar Tree and some of these gift boxes. I loved this tree print. The Dollar Tree has come out with some really pretty gift box prints this year, and you can use them as boxes or do some DIYs with them like I am going to show you in today's video. So all I did was cut off all the sides from the gift box, and then I'm going to take my tag and I'm just tracing it out on the back, and then I will cut that down so that I can glue it on top of my tag. I'm just going to take some Mod Podge and put that right on the front of my tag, spread it all out, and then add the print to the front of my tag. For my second tag, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in moss, and I'm going to give that one good coat on the front and all the sides.
Next, I'm going to be using this Couture surface wax. Since I am going to be using a transfer on the front of it, I want to make sure that my transfer does not bleed, and with any porous surface that I put my transfers on, I always make sure to use the wax first. And I'm going to go in with this all spruced up transfer from Couture. I love this one, and I thought it was perfect to go along with the trees from the gift box print, so I'm just going to align that where I want it. Use my bright white chalk paste and little squeegee and apply the paste to the transfer, and then I'll lift that up, and then I have a really cute little saying. You could use your Cricut if you don't have the Couture transfer, or you could write it out, use some stickers, but I just make sure I give that a nice wash before I move on to the next step so that I can use that again in the future. I'm just going to add some glue, and I'm going to glue these two tags together. I also cut up a couple pieces of this pick, and I believe that I got this from Hobby Lobby. I just glued it right to the top of that front tag sign, and then I'm also going to take some of this ribbon that I also purchased from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to tie it into a simple shoelace bow, glue it right to the middle between those two greenery pieces, and that is it for this DIY. I thought this was so much fun, and it turned out super cute. You could add this to a mini wreath if you wanted to, or you could do what I did and I set it on one of my decorative tables. You are going to take a scrap piece of wood. This was, I believe, a 1x6 and probably about 20 inches long. I'm going to start by painting it with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I painted the back and all of the sides. You're not going to need to paint the front because you are going to be covering it up anyways, so just to make it finished, I painted the back and all of the sides with just one good coat. Now I'm going to take these wooden trees that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I took 3 of them, and I'm just removing the little tags from the back, and I'm going to paint one of them with my Dixie Belle chalk paint in Barn Red, and I painted the front and all of the sides. No need to paint the back. And then for my next one, I'm painting this with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and for my third one, painting it with my Waverly chalk paint in moss. I did want to distress my trees, so I'm taking a chip brush that I got from the Dollar Tree, dipping it into some Waverly Wax and Antique, and then dabbing off the excess, and then doing back and forth strokes over my trees to give it that nice distressed look. I do that over all 3, and then I add a little bit of white paint to the brush, dabbing the majority of it off, and then going over the green and the red tree just to give it some more dimension, some more character, adding another color in there. And then for my white tree, to give it a little bit more dimension, I take some more of that Waverly chalk paint in moss and do the exact same thing, just adding a little bit of distressing over it. I'm going to take this Hello Christmas scrapbook paper collection kit that you can purchase off of my website, moredecalanddecor.com. The link is always listed down below, but I'm going to take a piece of paper that comes from this kit, and it has a whole bunch of houses all over it, and I just think that it looks really fun. So I cut mine into 2 pieces so that I could have it covering the entire board. I also wanted to make sure the seam was in the middle so that my middle tree would mostly cover up that seam, and then you wouldn't be able to see it as well. And I just used some Mod Podge to adhere my paper to my wood. And then the last step is just to hot glue your trees right on top of your sign. And I just did red, white, and then green. I think this turned out really cute. This is such an easy and simple project to do, and I think it would look adorable sitting on any kind of shelf. take my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm going to start painting this 12 by 12 board that I have. You don't necessarily need a piece of wood for this. You could use some poster board if you had it. I just happen to have a piece of wood, so that is what I went with today. I did one rough coat with that. After that, I'm going to take some of my painter's tape and some Waverly black chalk paint, and I just split my board into 3 different sections. I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to do a kind of dry brush technique. I don't want the lines to be fully saturated. I want them to look messy and rustic. And I am just going to drag my brush along each side of that painter's tape on the ends. Now you don't necessarily need the painter's tape. It just kind of helped me center where exactly I wanted my lines to be. For my third line, I just kind of eyeballed it, hoping for a straight line, and for the most part it worked. I just did the exact same thing, kind of doing a dry brush technique. This was my version of a semi-buffalo check kind of sign, and I'm actually really happy with the way it turned out. So I just flipped my sign over and started doing the lines the opposite direction. Again, I just did a line in the middle and then a line on each side. I mostly just used the painter's tape to help give me a bit of a guide and some direction, and to be able to space out my lines evenly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your lines may not be straight, just like mine, but in the end, it doesn't really even matter with how rustic and messy it looks. I think it looks great. And then I just took my black chalk paint and just went around all of the sides with that. Now I'm going to take this garland that I picked up from Michael's and then this wreath that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to undo the garland. I probably could have just left it the way it was, honestly, but I unwrapped the entire thing and began just wrapping around all the pieces that were separate. I just wrapped them around so it was just one long garland, and I began attaching it to my wreath. I used some wire to hold everything down. I'm not a huge fan of hot glue when it comes to wreaths because I do like to reuse them, and this is a great project that I could take apart later and use the garland for something separate and then use the wreath for something separate. And then I took some of this berry garland that I got from Hobby Lobby as well, and I just looped that around my entire wreath. I took some of this burlap ribbon that you can also get from Hobby Lobby. I just looped it through the wreath and then hot glued the ends together, and I adjusted where I wanted my wreath to hang on the sign, and then I just hot glued the ribbon to the back of my sign. And that is it for this cute buffalo check wreath sign. I absolutely love the way it turned out.
Really easy DIY. You're gonna pick up a blank sign from Hobby Lobby. This was $14.99, but I did purchase it when it was on sale, so I think it was about 40% off. And I love that this is already stained and painted, and I don't have to do any kind of changes. So if you're looking for DIYs that are really simple and easy and aren't going to take a ton of time, going over to Hobby Lobby and buying some of their wooden signs, I think is a super great deal. So I am going to be putting vinyl on top of this, and I want to make sure that my vinyl is going to stick because, like I said, vinyl just has a hard time sticking down to wood. So I like adding some sort of sealant on top of it, and using a matte Mod Podge works great. So I just go through with a sponge brush and add my Mod Podge and wait for that to dry. And then I purchased a design on Etsy. I'll link that design down below. But sometimes for me personally, spending maybe $2 or $3 on a design versus me having to spend hours designing it myself is 100% worth it. And sometimes my creative brain, when coming to designing things, it just isn't there. So I found this one and I thought this was so cute. So I am just going through and weeding this out. It says Christmas market and a bunch of little Christmas words at the bottom. I just thought it was adorable. Like I said, I'll leave a link to the design down below so that you can grab it if you'd like. But I just weeded the entire thing out, and you do have to be a little bit careful with some of the smaller words and the smaller dots. You just want to make sure that those aren't coming up when you're weeding your design. And then again, I'm just going to take my Expressions Vinyl Transfer Tape, lay that down, and then peel that up, and just take your time making sure that everything is coming up on your transfer tape that should be. And then I just laid this down and eyeballed it as best as I could. You could also use some wax paper to help get this a little bit more straightened out if you wanted. And then I'm just going to burnish it with my burnishing Cricut tool, make sure that everything is nice and stuck down, and then remove my transfer tape. That's all you got to do for this DIY. Super easy. If you don't have a Cricut, you could always purchase the design and then do the carbon transfer paper method and use a black paint pen to fill in your design. Sometimes you just need a super simple and easy DIY, and I think this one turned out gorgeous. We are going to make a herringbone tree. Now I have this picture right up here. Screenshot it so that you can save it for when you want to do this DIY. These are the measurements for each piece and where they're all laid out so that you can get this DIY done the exact same way. So I started off by taking a 1x2 and cutting it down to all of these sizes that you see here. And I am going to paint these in my Craft Smart stain. Now they don't make this stain anymore, which makes me really sad. It's no longer available. This is quite an old DIY from a couple years ago when they were still making this, but you can stain it in whatever color you want. I like using water-based stains a lot of the time because then I can do it in my craft room without it stinking up the place. But you know, whatever stain works, whatever you want to do is perfectly fine. And I just make sure to go through and stain all of my pieces. Now, if I was to do this again, I may have glued everything down first and then stained later, just so that my glue would adhere better. I find that glue definitely adheres together better before it's painted or stained, especially stained, but that's just the experience that I've had over the years of crafting. So once I have all of my pieces stained, I'm going to go ahead and start gluing them together. I'm using a combination of clear Gorilla Glue and hot glue. Another thing that I probably would have changed if I was to do this DIY over again now versus then is I probably wouldn't have used the hot glue, or maybe I would have used a hot glue Gorilla Glue. I just find when I'm gluing pieces together, especially wood and hot glue, nothing is very flat or flush together. There's always like a little gap in between. So I probably would have just used good old Gorilla Glue wood glue and let it set up for several hours. But sometimes when you're doing DIYs, you want things to go a bit faster. But I feel like the weight of letting the glue dry is worth it when it comes to this project. After I had all of my pieces assembled, we took it back out to the saw and we cut the bottom down just to make it a nice straight flat edge. If you want to keep it the way that it is, by all means, you can do that. I just preferred to have mine flat at the bottom. I'm going to make a base for the tree and the tree trunk, so I'm just taking that same stain and staining both of those pieces. And I'm going to go through and dry brush over my tree. I'm just using my Waverly chalk paint in white. You could leave it this stained look if you wanted, but I really love the two-toned stained and painted look to pieces, so I just went over the entire thing and dry brushed that. Next, I'm going to wrap my tree trunk with some twine. I just hot glued it in the back, wrapped it around several times, and then hot glued the other end to the back again. And then I'm going to assemble my tree trunk and my base. So I'm just going to add some hot glue, and again, for time's sake, use the hot glue, but if you want this to last, make sure that you're using a wood glue. My trunk has already fallen off of my tree, so I need to reattach it, and I will definitely be using some wood glue and letting it set up so that it is all nice and sturdy. But this is how my herringbone tree turned out. I love this thing. I think it's so adorable, and again, it's another one of those pieces where you could leave it out all Christmas, all winter. It doesn't have to be just a Christmas piece, and I think that this is so much fun. For this DIY, you can get these wooden fence posts from your local hardware store. I picked these up at Home Depot. They were less than $4 a piece and they were 6 feet tall. I cut mine down maybe by 12 inches or so. All I'm going to do is cross them like you would skis. And I had my husband drill in some screws for me because he's my handy man. And, you know, he's there. Why not let him help just a little bit? And he just screwed in 2 screws for me right in the middle where they overlap, and that's going to keep them in place. I am going to make a little wreath to go on top of it. I didn't paint it. You could. I decided to leave mine the plain wood color, but if you want to paint and stain yours, you can definitely do that. I am going to take a wreath form from the Dollar Tree, some 12-foot garland that also comes from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to wrap this around the wreath over and over and over again till it's nice and full, and you can hot glue the ends to keep everything nice and secure in place. Next, I'm going to take this pick and I just cut this all apart. I cut all the branches off and I'm going to start sticking them inside my wreath, and since it is a foam wreath, I just pushed the ends into the foam. I didn't worry about hot glue, didn't worry about wires. Everything stayed nice and intact just by stabbing the ends into the foam. And I'm going to put this all in the same direction, going the same way all the way around the wreath. And then I also had these frosted berries that came from the Dollar Tree. I kept these in sets of 2 and I just stuck the wires down into the foam. You could hot glue it for a little bit more security, but I felt like these were pretty nice and snug inside of there, so I didn't worry about that. I have some of this ribbon that I purchased from Hobby Lobby. I just took a piece and hot glued the ends together, wrapped it around the wreath, and then I am going to make a bow. Now, I'm not the greatest bow maker by any means. I really need to invest in one of those bow makers, you know, that you can buy off Amazon, the wood with the wood posts. I really need to get myself one of those because I'm not good at doing this by hand. So I ended up cutting 3 loops, hot gluing them together, and then kind of tying all 3 of them together. It works in the end, and I think it looks great, but there is definitely some room for improvement. So I am going to do that. I'm going to invest in one, but you make your bow or go to the store and buy a pre-made bow. You know, whatever floats your boat, whatever you want to do. But I just made the bow. I took an excess piece of ribbon and hot glued it around the middle so that you wouldn't see the twine that I used to tie all 3 of the loops with. And then I cut myself out some tails. I hot glued that to the back, and then I hot glued the bow to the ribbon on the wreath. And then I hung the wreath in the middle of our now skis. And this makes such a cute porch leaner for Christmas, for winter. You can leave it up all season long. And I just think that this is so adorable next to my door. I grabbed the longer, skinnier wall shelf out of all the options that they have, and I cut the sides down so that the sides do not have the holes in them anymore. So you're just going to go ahead and cut those off. I'm going to start by painting that piece with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I just gave the front and the sides one good coat. You can paint the back to make it more finished. I didn't, just for time's sake for today's video. I'm going to set that to the side to dry, and then I found these Merry Christmas letters at Hobby Lobby, and they were $2.99 on sale for 60% off. So I thought this was a really great deal, and I'm going to start by staining these with my Waverly Wax and Antique. I'm just going to use this like you would a regular stain, putting the wax on and then wiping the excess off.
Next, I found these wooden Christmas lights in the Target dollar spot. They were $3 for a pack of 4, and I picked up 2 of them. I'm going to take 4 of them and paint them with my Waverly chalk paint in moss. And then for the other 4, I'm going to use my Dixie Belle Barn Red. Once the paint is all dry, I'm going to take some gold rub and buff on a small detailed paintbrush, and I'm going to go along the cap of all of the light bulbs and paint the sides and the top of that light bulb with that rub and buff. I wanted the top of the lights to have that shiny metallic gold look to them, and I think the rub and buff does a fantastic job. You could also just use some gold paint if you wanted, but this is what I had on hand right next to me, and I think that it turned out really pretty. With that pack of letters from Hobby Lobby, it also came with a pack of eyelets, and I screwed 8 of these into the bottom of our sign, and I measured about 1 3/4 of an inch between each eyelet, and I just went through and screwed all of those in. Next, I'm going to take some twine, and I tried to measure all my twine about the same length. I'm going to string that through the little eyelets at the top of my light bulbs, and I'm just going to tie a knot around each light bulb at the bottom. Now, I've set out all of my letters to spell out Merry Christmas on my sign, and I tried my best to space them out as evenly as I possibly could. I'm just using my super glue wood glue that comes from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to glue all of my letters down. Now, once those letters are all nice and dry and stuck down there, I'm going to start stringing on my light bulbs. Now, originally, I was going to try to have these all match up as best as I could in length so that they were just all nice and straight across. That didn't quite happen, so what I ended up doing was having the green light bulbs a little bit shorter in length than the red ones, so all the green ones were just a tad bit shorter, and I love the look that it gave to them. So all I'm going to do is just string these through the eyelets, tie a knot, and then I will trim off the excess twine that is on the top of all of these. Lastly, I'm going to screw in 2 more eyelets on the top of the sign so that I can string some twine from it and use it as a door hanger. You could, hang this on the wall, hang it on a door. You could even hang this between a wreath. But this is it for this DIY. It's one of my favorites. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Project, I'm going to take one of these wooden gnomes that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to take 5 of these wooden planks that you can also get from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by cutting off all the twine hangers that are on all of them, and I'm going to fill all the holes with some wood filler. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I did it for good measure just in case my frame did not cover them. I also remove the twine hanger from the gnome, and I put wood filler in the little hole at the top of his hat as well. Now I'm going to take all 5 of those wood plank pieces and my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm just going to give them one rough coat. I want to see some of that natural wood peeking through, so I just make sure to just kind of do a messy coat of this. I wanted it to look more rustic, so I only did just that one messy coat. And then for my gnome, I'm going to take some of this Dixie Belle chalk paint in Barn Red. I think this color is so pretty, especially for Christmas time, and I'm going to paint his hat one coat in this, and then his little legs and boots in this color as well. For his beard, I'm just going in with my Waverly chalk paint in white. I give his beard one good coat, and then somehow I don't have the footage anymore of me just kind of adding some streaks of gray to his beard, just to give his beard a little bit more dimension and, you know, make it look a little bit more gray and salt peppery. Now I'm going to take all 5 of those planks that I had painted. I'm going to turn them onto their back, and I'm going to use large popsicle sticks to adhere them all together. I just tried to line them up as straight as I possibly could, and then I'm just going to attach them all together using those popsicle sticks and some hot glue. And then I grabbed a square dowel from Lowe's. This is a 1/4 inch square dowel, and I cut it into 4 pieces. So you're going to cut 2 pieces the same size for the top and the bottom, and then 2 pieces the same size for the sides. I didn't measure this, I just kind of eyeball it. So I don't know a specific measurement, but I just put it up against my sign and marked with a pencil where I needed to cut it, and then cut it that way. Now to put it all together, I'm going to take some E6000 because I really want to make sure that this is going to stick and stay. And then I used some Gorilla Gel super glue as well, and then I just started framing out my sign. I just put the bottom piece on first, and then I'll put the 2 side pieces, and then I will put the top piece on last. And then lastly, all I'm going to do is hot glue my gnome to the very middle. And that's it for this DIY. I think this is so cute. It's just a very simple and rustic sign that I just think is perfect for Christmas. I grabbed this scrap piece of wood that I had laying around in my garage. It's a 1x8 and then approximately 17.5 inches long. And I'm going to start by painting the entire thing in one good coat of my Waverly chalk paint in white. Once that is all nice and dry, I'm going to take this masking tape, this just came from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use this to create a buffalo check pattern. So I'm going to start with a piece of tape. I'm going to tape that to the bottom of my wood, and then I'm going to take another piece of the tape and use it as a spacer. I'm just going to continue to lay my tape down using the spacer afterwards, and then lay the tape down, the spacer, and just back and forth until I get to the top. I took this Waverly chalk paint in silver lining, and I'm going to paint in between all of those pieces of tape. I took a sponge brush and did up and down dabbing motions, but I'm also going to use some paint brushes for this as well. So the biggest thing I could recommend is just doing up and down dabbing motions and not going side to side, whether you're using a sponge or you're using a paintbrush. You'll go ahead and remove that tape, wait for your paint to be all the way dry, and then you are going to do the exact same thing, just the opposite direction. So I'm going to take my tape, lay it down, take a spacer and lay that down, and then more tape, and just back and forth until the entire thing is covered. Now for my next color, I just used a bit of a darker gray. I just mixed some black and white paint together, and then afterwards I realized that I had a darker gray that could have worked perfectly. So just take a darker paint color, whether that be gray or whatever color of paint that you're using, just a bit of a darker color than the first one. Now I'm going to leave that tape there, and I'm going to take my third section of tape. I'm going to put this on top of where we put our first tape down originally. So you can kind of see where those white stripes are already on the board, and I'm just putting my tape back on top of there. So now you're going to take some black paint and you are going to paint all of those squares that are no longer covered by the tape and just paint all of those black. Once those are done, you are just going to remove the tape from your entire piece. So all the vertical and all of the horizontal tape, you're just going to remove it all and you'll be left with a fun buffalo check pattern on your piece of wood. I think this is fun, you know, just with your regular black and white buffalo check, or you could do this with some other fun colors. And I just think it turns out so nice. Next, I grabbed this Merry Christmas sign from Hobby Lobby. It was $2.99 and then it was also 50% off. So I got it for about $1.50 and I thought that it was a really great deal, especially for the quality. So I just started out by staining it. This is with my Voodoo stain from Dixie Belle. I love their stains just because it's water-based and it's not stinky, so I can use it in my craft room without it, you know, stinking up the place. So I just did that first and kind of painted it on with a paintbrush and then wiped off all the excess with the paper towel. Now I grabbed this Crackle Medium from Folk Art. I've done this in the past before on one of my other projects where I lay my Crackle Medium down on top of the stain and then paint over it, and then the paint turned out all crackly and fun. This didn't turn out for some reason. I'm not sure why or what I did wrong, but I painted on there and then added my paint on top of it, and I did use a chalk paint and it didn't crackle. I'm not sure why. This is the Dixie Belle chalk paint in Barn Red. And yeah, it didn't work. So not sure what happened, but I still think it turned out cute anyways. I haven't used Crackle Mediums enough to know why it didn't work. This was just the second time that I've used it. But anyways, I decided since it didn't work that I was just going to go ahead and distress it on my own. So I just took some sandpaper and just ran it over the entire thing. I wanted it to have a very distressed look to it. So I just took that sandpaper and ran it along all the edges as much as I could and just tried to rough it up a bit. After that, I'm just going to use my wood super glue that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I just put it all over the back of my words and then centered it as best as I could on my sign. Lastly, I took some twine and I wrapped it around each side 2 times, tying it in a double knot in the back. And that is all you got to do for this DIY. I think this one is so much fun and super affordable considering the words were only $1.50. The wood, I don't know, maybe $1 or $2 in wood. And then obviously your paint and everything like that. So probably under $5 for this whole project. And I think it turned out adorable. For this DIY, I am going to take one of these long planks of wood that you can now get at the Dollar Tree and one of these 1x2 pieces of wood that you can also get at the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by removing the twine hanger from the top, and then I'm going to take some wood filler and fill in those holes at the top of my plank piece. Now I am going to kind of measure out where I want my white paint to go because this is going to be a rustic snowman. And so I just kind of measured how far down I want his face to be and his hat to be. And I'm going to take some Waverly white chalk paint and I'm just going to go over the bottom half with just one coat of paint. I don't mind if there are pieces kind of peeking through of that natural wood because I wanted this to be more rustic. And then for the top half, I am going to go in with my Waverly chalk paint in black. Now for the brim part of the hat for the snowman with that 1x2 wood piece, I'm just going to take some Waverly Wax and Antique and I just give the front and all the sides a really good coat.
Next, for the carrot nose, I'm going to take one of these tall pillar candles from the Dollar Tree. I've done this with a couple candles before in the past, and I think that they all turned out really fun. So I'm just going to cut off a piece towards the top with the top of the candle as the point of the nose, and I just trimmed it down to however big that I wanted the carrot nose to be. And then I'm going to take a utility knife, and I'm just going to go through and rough the candle up. I'm going to go and shave off all the sides so it's not so perfect and round looking. I'm going to give it a whole bunch of indents all over so it just looks like it's been through some days so that it doesn't look so perfect and it looks like a carrot where it has all the indents and the scratches and everything like that. I'm just going to go through and do that with the utility knife. Once I've got that all done, I'm going to take some pumpkin chalk paint from Waverly and I'm going to give the nose a good 2 coats. After that's dry, I'm going to take my Waverly Wax and Antique and I'm going to make the nose look a little dirty and make sure that it gets in all the cracks and crevices. And I just took a paper towel and just kind of rubbed this all over the nose. And then to assemble my pieces, I'm just going to take some hot glue. I'm going to add my hat on, just add a tilt. And then I'm going to take this scarf from the Dollar Tree, which is actually perfect for this DIY. And I'm going to cut a piece down at the bottom. I'm going to make sure that I get those little fringy ends in there. And I just went maybe halfway up the scarf and then I cut that piece off, and that's what I'm going to use for the scarf around the snowman. So I'm just going to take my scarf piece, wrap it around the snowman, and then I tie a double knot and I hide away that other second end just by tucking it up and underneath the scarf. And then I trim down the fringe at the end so it's not too long. And then lastly, I'm just going to hot glue his nose in place, and you have this adorable rustic snowman. I had a bunch of these beachy houses left over from summertime, so I decided to get these out and do some DIYs with them. I'm just going to take 2 of them, pop those roof pieces off on the front, and we are going to use the back as the front for these ones. I'm going to take this Dixie Belle paint in Barn Red, and I'm going to paint the entire thing in this color. And then for my other house, I'm just going to use my Waverly chalk paint in white. Now I'm going to prep my houses by using the Couture surface wax. I do this so that when I use my transfers on top of it, they're much less likely to bleed. And then I also wanted to give the houses a little bit more detail, so I'm just taking this ruler that I have and a pencil, and I'm just going and drawing some lines on it, so it kind of makes it look like there are some faux shiplap lines on there. Now I'm going to take this transfer that has a whole bunch of different designs on it. It's one of my favorites, and I just cut a couple of those designs out. I'm going to add them to my houses, and I just tried to center those as best as I could. For the red house, I'm going to use my Couture paste in white, and I just apply that on with my squeegee. You just want to make sure that you're not leaving too thick of a layer on there. Before you pull it off, you want to try to scrape off as much of that paste as you possibly can, and then you will pull your transfer off to reveal this really pretty image. And then for my white house, I'm using the chalk paste in Pesto, and I think this one looks so pretty as well. So you just want to make sure you're scraping off as much paste as you can, remove that transfer, and then make sure you wash your transfers afterwards so that you can use them again. Lastly, I'm just reattaching those roof pieces that we pulled off the front, and I'm attaching those to the back. And that is it for this DIY. This was really simple and super fast and easy to do. Maybe took me like 10 to 15 minutes, mostly just waiting for the paint to dry, and that's it. I love these super quick and easy projects, especially as a mom of 3 and a small business owner. Quicker and easier the projects, the better. And I think these turned out super cute.
you are going to need a pack of shims from your local Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever hardware store. You want to get a pack of shims, and you are going to take out a handful of them. I didn't count how many I used. You'll just grab as many as how big you want your tree to be. All I'm going to do is just hot glue them together, as simple as that, making sure the thicker part is all connected at the bottom and the skinnier part of the shims are all going to be connected at the top. That's all you got to do. Just keep hot gluing your pieces together over and over and over again until you get the thickness that you want your tree to be. Next, I am going to take one of these pillar pieces that actually came off of a tiered tray from Goodwill, and I've had this sitting around in my collection forever, so I decided to use it for this project. I'm going to paint it a white with a couple of good coats, and then I'm going to take this scrap wood piece that actually came from the Dollar Tree, and this is just going to be the base to give it a nice stand. I'm going to let those dry, and then I'm going to move on to our tree portion, which I'm going to paint with the Waverly chalk paint in moss, and I just gave this a really rough coat. I didn't bother trying to cover the entire thing. I wanted this to look rustic and farmhouse, so I did not cover everything up. Then I'm just going to take some hot glue on my little pillar piece and hot glue that down to the middle of our scrap wood. And then I'm going to take this star that I got in a pack from Hobby Lobby. I'm just taking the little ring off the top, and then I'm just going to hot glue this to the top of my tree. And then I'm going to grab some red glittery berry garland that I believe I got from Dollar Tree, either Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby, one of the two. But I'm going to grab this and wrap it around my tree, and then I'll just hot glue that in place, and then I will just add some hot glue to the pillar and add my tree on top, and that is it for this DIY. I thought this turned out super cute, and it was super easy and simple to do. Even if you don't have one of these little pillar pieces like I have, you could use a large dowel. You could go to Lowe's and pick up a leg and cut it down. You could go to Hobby Lobby and get one of their unfinished candlestick holders. So many different options and ways that you could do this DIY. We are going to grab one of those wooden 12-inch rounds that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I grabbed this Less Mess wood stain from Rust-Oleum. It has the sponge applicator and actually is pretty easy to use. Is it necessary? I don't know. And it's more expensive than just buying regular stain, but I had purchased it when I was doing my Walmart supplies only video. If you guys haven't watched that and you want to check it out, I'll leave it linked down below. But I just grabbed a whole bunch of stuff to do Walmart DIYs with. This was one of the things I grabbed, and it is pretty convenient, but it's probably just as easy to buy just regular stain. So I just stained the entire circle. Now I did do this DIY twice because the first time I made the white circle way too big. So I'm going to take this little wooden round that actually came from Walmart, and I'm going to use that as a template. And I'm going to take a white paint pen and trace around that circle. So you're kind of making a little bit more than half a circle on your sign. And then I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm just going to fill that circle in. We are making a little snowman head right here. Now you could absolutely just freehand this entire project. I am not so great when it comes to freehanding. My freehand skills are just not there. So I decided to break out my Cricut and cut this out. Now, if you have a Cricut, I will leave a link to this project in my description box so that you can click on it and just cut everything out. Now, I just cut out a carrot nose and some dots for his mouth.
this saying, "Let it snow," and some snowflakes. So like I said, all of that will be on that link if you want to do this project. And I am just going to layer my carrot nose with the black and the orange and lay that down on top of my snowman. And then I'll take those little black dots that I also cut out for his mouth, and I'm just going to lay those down. And I just kind of do them like stickers. I just remove off the backing and place them where I want them to be. I also made a little cutout for his arm, and I just laid that down. I didn't have any kind of different colored brown vinyl for this, so even though it matches a little bit with the background, I feel like you can still see it pretty well against the brown background. But if you have a lighter brown, or if you just use a different stain, probably would work better. And I just get my transfer tape from Expressions Vinyl. I'll leave that linked down below. It's just this clear transfer tape. It's my personal favorite when it comes to transfer tape. And another piece of advice when you are doing this project, before you lay any of your vinyl down, I would seal your piece with some sort of sealant. I like using just matte Mod Podge, and I should have done that before, but that will make putting your vinyl onto your sign so much easier, because vinyl is not a fan of sticking to wood, and stained wood at that. So I always have a little bit of trouble getting my vinyl to stick if I haven't applied a sealant, and in this one I did not. So just make sure that you're sealing it beforehand, and that will save you a whole lot of trouble from trying to get your vinyl to stick to your sign. Now I'm going to take some ticking fabric, and I'm just going to tie a super simple bow. I just took 2 loops and tied them together like you would your shoelaces. Now the back is going to be forward on the front, and I just kind of flipped everything around so all the right sides were showing, and I just tied that into a small bow and dovetailed the ends. I also took some pieces off of this pick, hot glued that down to the very top, and then added my bow on top of that. And that is it for this DIY. Really simple and easy, and I think this turned out adorable. I picked up a couple of these paper mache trees that you can get from Hobby Lobby and some fabric. The trees were $6.99 on sale, 50% off. And then, like I said, the fabric, it also came from Hobby Lobby. I am going to make some gnomes out of these. I thought these turned out so cute, and I love gnomes. If you've been watching my channel, you know that I am a sucker for some cute gnomes. So the first thing I did was take my fabric that I got, and I wrapped it around the top of the tree form just to see how much fabric I needed. And I'm going to take this fur material that also came from Hobby Lobby. They have a whole bunch of different kinds of faux fur that you can get from there. And I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, and I'm going from the back and just kind of picking through that material. I don't want to cut any of the fur, so I wouldn't recommend doing this with scissors, but just taking your X-Acto knife and going up through there just makes it so that the backing is cut and the fur is not. Next, I'll take my hot glue, and I'm going to hot glue this just high enough so that the bottom of the fur is touching the bottom of the cone so that you don't see the bottom of that cone very well. And then I just hot glue the rest of it around the tree form. And then I'm going to take that fabric. I didn't want the raw end to show, so I decided to hot glue that down so that it looked like a finished edge from where the fabric meets the fur. Next, I just started hot gluing my fabric around the tree form. Now, you want to make sure that you're hot gluing your fabric over top of the fur so that the top of the fur doesn't show. And then one piece of advice is to not add hot glue to the fabric where you're going to add your nose later. I ended up accidentally doing that and had to pry the glue up from the tree form so that I could fit his nose underneath the top of the fabric. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, I didn't want my hat to be just completely,
flat against the tree form. I wanted it to have some texture. I wanted it to almost look like it was oversized. So I just hot glued the fabric together in the back, but didn't add any more glue anywhere else so that there were a bunch of folds throughout the hat. And then I gathered up the top of the hat and added some twine around the top and wrapped that around several times, tying it in a double knot just so that it had, more of a finished look in the front. And then I'm just going to take these flat half beads that you can get from Hobby Lobby, and I just glued that right underneath the top of his nose. And that is it for this guy. And then for my second gnome, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I have some more beard material that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. I am just going to hot glue that around the cone. And then I picked up this really fun, kind of soft, fuzzy fabric from Hobby Lobby. I thought this one was fun and looked very, kind of wintry. So I'm going to wrap that around. And this time I made sure not to add any hot glue to the front of the hat so that I could lift it up and have my bead go under there. So I hot glued it on the sides and then hot glued it in the back. And I just kind of folded my material over, added some hot glue, folded my material over again. So again, I'm going for a very messy, loungy kind of look to this. And then I wanted to incorporate some twine. So I tied some twine around the bottom part and the back. And then I twisted it around his hat, going different ways to the top and then crossing it all over, going down. So I just think that it gave it a really fun kind of wintry look to it. And then I just tied it in the back and tied it in a double knot where I tied it in a double knot before, and then added his nose, added some hot glue to the top of his nose and folded that fabric down on top. And that's it for my two gnomes. I think they turned out so cute. You could also paint the paper mache in the back if you wanted to. I didn't think it was too big of a deal, but I think these are so much fun and so cute. And they also had different sizes of these tree forms. So if you wanted different size gnomes, you could get bigger ones and smaller ones. I just think these turned out so cute. I picked up this Let's Eat cutting board from Walmart. I actually got this on sale for $2.50. It's originally $5, but only $2.50. And I'm going to stain it in this Rust-Oleum Beryl Brown. I just stained the entire thing. You don't necessarily have to do that because I am going to be painting some of it. I just decided to stain the whole thing because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it when I was doing this. But just stain your entire piece and then let it dry for a little while before adding your paint. Once it is all dry, I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint in Moss. I'm going to take some painter's tape and add that to my cutting board. I made it so that the stained part was smaller than the painted part. So you're just going to place your painter's tape wherever you want, your paint to stain ratio. However you want to do it is perfect. I just gave that one good coat, and then I'm going to distress the edges just by taking some sandpaper and going along all the edges so that original kind of lighter wood color is peeking through. Now I'm going to add some surface wax to the painted portion because I am going to be using a Couture transfer. So I'm going to take it on just a cloth and add my wax to it. This is going to help with bleeding whenever I'm using Couture transfers or transfers that are similar to Couture ones, the adhesive stencils. I'm going to wax it, and like I said, I just find that it helps with bleeding so that I don't have any issues when I'm using my transfer. I'm going to take this one right here. It says Merry Christmas and has little trees. This is back in stock on Couture's website. They just launched a whole bunch of new stuff and brought back some of their other transfers. So if you're looking for some new autumn and Halloween and Christmas and just everyday transfers, they just launched a whole bunch of them. I'll leave Couture linked down below so you guys can check them out. I may have gone on a little bit of a shopping spree yesterday when they launched. So I'm excited to get that order. But like I said, if you want to check out their new stuff, I will leave it linked down below.
And I'll also have the name of this one down below so that if you want to find this one, you can. So I just took that transfer, fuzzed it because it was a little bit too sticky. I'm going to add that to the bottom portion of my cutting board, and I just make sure it's all nice and stuck down. I'm going to use my bright white chalk paste on a squeegee, and I'm just going to squeegee this on top of my transfer, just making sure that I'm getting everything nice and covered, and then scraping off all of the excess because you don't want too much on there. And really, it doesn't take a whole lot of this paste to get this covered up. So I just make sure I scrape off any excess, and then I pull that up to reveal this beautiful image. Just make sure that you wash your transfer afterwards, and you can use it lots of times after that. I'm going to take some twine and wrap it around the handle of my cutting board several times, and I just glue the ends to the back. And then I'm going to take this greenery that I had. I just took a couple pieces off the pick that I had. I put the ends underneath the twine to hold it in place, and then I'm going to tie a bow using this trim that I got from Walmart. I'm just going to glue this right to the top of those greenery pieces, and this DIY is done. I'm going to take 2 more of these long, skinnier wall shelves. I'm going to start by removing the twine that is knotted through all 4 holes, and I'm going to use my wood glue super glue to attach both of these wall shelves together, making one larger piece. Next, I found this galvanized Noel sign that came from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove that hanger, and I'm going to take it to my garage and give it a couple coats of this satin heirloom white spray paint from Rust-Oleum. I'm going to take my Hello Christmas paper pack that you can purchase from my website, and I have this red snowflake pattern that I think is so pretty, and I just cut this down several times so that it would fit onto my sign. I'm just using a glue stick for this. By all means, use some Mod Podge if you'd rather do that, but I found that the glue stick worked just fine and just as well as when I used the Mod Podge, and I just glued both of the pieces that I cut down right onto my sign, and then I trimmed off any excess with an X-Acto knife. Once the paint on the Noel sign was all dry, I took some super glue to the back, and I'm just going to center that as best as I can on the front. I'm going to take some ribbon that came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to tie this into a really simple shoelace type bow just by taking 2 loops and tying those together, and I'm going to hot glue that to the top of the sign, covering up that hole in the Noel, and then I just glued my tails down so that they had a little lift to them, and that is it for this DIY. I think this turned out so cute. I am going to take some of these tall candles that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I picked up 4 of them, added some water to my stock pot, and I am going to melt these candles down. Now, all of these DIYs are so easy and relatively fast, besides this one being a little bit slower just because you're waiting for that wax to melt. I also grabbed this little jar from the Dollar Tree. I loved the pattern on the outside of it, and I thought it looked really cute, so I picked this one up. Now, I'm going to take the wick from one of those candles, and I just placed it right inside that jar. I'm going to take my melted wax and pour it inside my jar. You want to make sure that you're using something to cover your hands so that your hands are protected from the heat.
and I ended up using 2 full candles for this jar. I also found this apple cinnamon fragrance oil that you can also pick up from the Dollar Tree. Since these candles have no smell, I thought that this would be perfect to add in here to make my candles smell nice. So I added a ton of drops, probably about 50 or so, and I probably could have added even more because the fragrance still isn't too strong with all the wax that I ended up putting in there. So I would say go crazy when putting your oil in there to make sure that it smells nice. And then I wanted some red wax. They didn't have any tall candles full of red wax, so I found these apple cinnamon candles from the Dollar Tree. I just took the other candle jars that were empty and placed the candles right on in there and waited for them to completely melt down. I also picked up this peppermint ice cube tray that I am going to use as a mold. So as soon as those candles were nice and melted, I just took those and added the melted wax into the ice cube tray. And then I ended up doing this with some white and some red on a couple other of the molds and waited for those to harden. Now that everything is nice and hardened, I'm just going to remove the little wax candies from the ice cube tray, and I loved how they turned out. I did some with a little bit of white in there and then waited for it to dry and added the red, and I think that it turned out really fun. I wanted this candle to look like it had a bunch of candy sitting on top of it, so I just placed a couple of those wax molds right inside of there, and it gave the appearance of peppermint candies inside of my candle, which I think looks so adorable. And then for the rest of my little candy molds that I'm not going to be using in this one, I can put in any kind of Scentsy or wax warmer that I have, and I just think it looks so cute in there. To finish off this jar, I just took some ribbon that I had that was kind of a peppermint looking ribbon, and I'm just hot gluing that around the middle, and that is it for this DIY. I think these turned out so adorable, and besides taking the time to wait for the wax to melt, this was so easy. And if you're looking to make your own little wax melt shapes, I think using the ice cube trays is so much fun. For this DIY, I grabbed these wooden skates that you can get as a pair from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to start by painting the entire thing black, minus the skates at the bottom, the star, and the little cuff of the boot at the top. Everything else is going to be painted black, and I just did one good coat on both of the boots. Once that's dry, I'm going to take a paintbrush and dab the back in some white Waverly chalk paint, and I'm just going to go over those engraved circles on the front where the laces would go, just to make those pop out more. And then I'm also going to paint the snowflake and the top of the boot in white as well. For the skate portion of them, I'm going to use my Waverly chalk paint in silver lining, and I just gave it one good coat. Next, I'm going to add some beads to some twine. I get my beads off of Amazon, which is linked in my Amazon store. And I'm going to string on about 7 of these. I'm going to add my twine through each of my skates. I also added a little bit of details to my skates. Of course, my camera was not filming when I did that, but I just added a little stitching around the cuffs of the skates at the top. But that's all you're going to do. Just add your skates to your twine and beads, and then you could hang this over a sign, have it lay out on a table. I think these are adorable. You are going to take 2 packs of the smaller wall shelves. Now these come with 2 in each pack, so you're going to have a total of 4 pieces. I'm going to start by assembling a little box. So again, I'm just using that wood glue super glue, adding some glue to the ends, and then forming a box. Once that is completely dry, I am going to start adding these half beads that I purchased from Amazon. You can find these in my Amazon store linked down below, but I'm just going to add a little bit of glue and I'm going to use these half beads to cover up those holes. To give it a little bit more stability, I took some tumbling tower pieces that you get from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to hot glue these into each corner. I want to make sure that my box isn't going to fall apart, so this just adds a little bit more strength to your box. I'm going to paint this with my Waverly chalk paint and plaster. Mine was a little bit too thick, so I did water some down, and I'm just going to paint the entire thing with one good coat of this color. Once that's dry, I'm going to take my gold rub and buff, and I just took that on a paper towel. I'm going to go over all of those beads that we put on, and I just buff that right on top of there. I'm also going to go along all the sides and the corners to give it a little bit more definition, and I wanted an extra little pop of color, so I just went through and kind of used it to distress my piece a little bit. But I love the way that it turned out, and I love how it looks with this tree that I purchased from Hobby Lobby sitting right in it. I think it looks absolutely adorable. I have a 16-inch wooden round. This was actually cut out from our laser machine, but you can find big rounds like this at Lowe's, Home Depot. You might even be able to find some at Hobby Lobby. So I'm going to start by painting this with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I just gave the front one good coat. Next, I am going to be using a Couture transfer with this, so I'm going to take my Couture surface wax and I just applied this to the bottom half of my sign because I'm only going to be doing this on the bottom half. On the top half, I'm going to be using this Dixie Belle rub on transfer, and I found these ones. I think that they were new this year. I've never seen them before, but they had a bunch of fun Christmas foliage. It's called the Evergreen and Holly, and I thought that these were just beautiful. So I found this one kind of like a half wreath with these 2 pink roses. I thought it was gorgeous. So I tried to just center it as best as I could at the top of my sign. I did end up having one of the leaves kind of cut off a little bit, but that wasn't too big of a deal to me. And it comes with this giant stick that you are just going to rub and rub and rub. These are like the Dollar Tree rub-on transfers, but on steroids. I mean, they are so detailed and so beautiful. I just love them so much. So you're just going to rub. I just kind of pull up as I go. So as I'm rubbing, I'm pulling up that carrier sheet, and if anything comes up that's supposed to be stuck down, I just lay it back down and rub over it some more. And you're going to do that until the entire thing is stuck to your sign. Next, I'm using this Couture transfer that says "This Home Believes." I'm just using the words for this one, and I'm going to use my fuzzing cloth to fuzz my transfer so it doesn't stick too much to my sign. And then I'm going to lay this down with the Believes centered on the sign. I'm going to use my chalk paste in black, and I'm going to go over the word Believes. I'm just going to use my squeegee to get that on there, make sure that it's all nice and covered, and then I'll pull that up. I wait for the word Believes to dry, and then I'm going to lay my transfer back down. I did put the carrier sheet behind the word Believes so that I didn't have any black going onto my sign that I didn't want there, and I just tried to center the "This Home" and then added my black chalk paste on top of it and removed it, and that is it for this one. I think that this turned out so pretty. I think this would be gorgeous in the middle of a large wreath on your front door, but I think with the flowers and the words, I think this one turned out so beautiful. I picked up these 2 skeins of yarn from Hobby Lobby. They were a little bit on the pricier side. They were 30% off, so don't feel like you have to get these ones exactly. Any neutral yarn will do, but I loved the chunky knit look to it, so I picked these 2 up. And I also grabbed these 2 paper tree forms from Hobby Lobby as well. All of their Christmas stuff right now, at least at my store, was 60% off, which I thought was a really great deal. The taller tree was $12.99 and the smaller tree I believe was $7.99, and then both 60% off. And I decided that I wanted to do a bigger version of the little trees that I did in my Christmas tiered tray video. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it down below, but I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did with those trees. I'm just going to glue the yarn all the way around my tree forms. Now, what I will say you want to do is to start from the top and work your way down instead of working your way bottom to top. This is because the top looks a lot nicer when you start from the top versus starting from the bottom. So as you can see here, I'm wrapping my yarn around the top of the tree, but you get to that point, well, where are you going to glue the cut off pieces? Are they going to stick up? And you kind of have to deal with trying to glue everything down so it looks nice and neat. When you have this yarn, at least, the knitted pieces all start coming apart. So you kind of have to glue it together, and you glue it to the tip of the tree, and it just doesn't look as nice as it would have if you had started from the top. It still doesn't look bad by any means. I just think that it looks a lot cleaner when you start from the top. And I also wanted to show you how much yarn that this used. Not a ton at all. I'd say you still have about 3/4 of the yarn left when you're doing the smaller tree. Now for the bigger tree, I used the sage color, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to put some hot glue at the very tip of the tree, and I'll show you how I wrapped the yarn around it. So I'm just taking the end of the yarn and I hot glue it kind of facing down towards the bottom of the tree, so I can wrap my yarn around the end of the yarn and cover up that end, and it just makes everything look a whole lot nicer and a whole lot cleaner than doing it the other way around. So all I'm going to do is continue this process all the way down, adding some hot glue, adding my yarn, adding my hot glue, and adding my yarn over and over and over until I get to the very end. Once I've reached the end, I'm going to add some hot glue to the very bottom of the tree on the underside, and I will attach my yarn right there, and that also hides the end of the yarn on the bottom. And that's all you have to do for this DIY. Super easy. You could add some little stars to the top if you wanted. I decided to keep mine plain, but I just think that these look so cute, especially with this yarn that I used. I just think it looks so adorable, and I can't wait to decorate my entryway table with these trees. I found these wooden snowmen from Hobby Lobby. You get them in a pack of 6 for $4.99, but they were on sale, so you got them for $2.50. I also found smaller snowmen, very similar to this from the Dollar Tree. You get 8 in a pack for $1.50. They are considerably smaller, but I decided I wanted to use both of them for this project. So I took 3 of each, and I'm going to paint the snowmen all white, and then I will paint all of their hats with my Waverly chalk paint and ink. Next, I just go through and take a really small detailed paintbrush, and I'm putting some buttons on the snowmen along with their eyes and their mouths. And then for their nose, I just use a paint pen to draw a little carrot on there. Next, I found this shadow box for $5 at the Target dollar spot just a couple weeks ago, and they had a whole bunch of different sizes and shapes. I'm also going to take this Couture transfer that says Hello Winter and has a whole bunch of different snowflakes on it. So because this is glass, I'm going to go ahead and fuzz up my transfers a ton to make sure they're not sticking too much to the glass, because I don't want them to stick so much that I end up stretching the transfer. So you just want to make sure that you fuzz it a bunch. And then I just place these snowflakes all over until I have them where I want them. And then I'm also going to place the word winter down in the bottom right corner. I'll go in with hello after that one's done, but I just got all of those on there. And then I'm using my chalk paste in bright white, and on a really small detailed squeegee, I'm just taking that chalk paste and going over all of my transfers and then peeling those up when they're done, and you have some fun snowflakes all over. You could also use some stickers if you wanted to, and I'll also leave the name of this transfer down in my description box so that you can find it as well. And then when all of my snowflakes and winter word are all nice and dry, I went back in with the word hello and just did the exact same thing, added that bright white chalk paste just above the word winter, and then that is done. Next, I'm going to take some trees that you can get from the Dollar Tree, and then my snowman that I made, and I'm just going to start hot gluing this inside of my shadow box. I just kind of played around with the arrangement, added my snowman and my trees in, just a random assortment, and glued those all in there. You just want to make sure that you're gluing them far enough that you'll still be able to slip your backing right back into place. Next, I'm going to take the backing of the shadow box. I added some Mod Podge, and I had some of this fake snow. I believe I picked this one up from Hobby Lobby, but you can also get this from the Dollar Tree. And I just kind of sprinkled this all over there. And then I also added some Mod Podge inside of my shadow box itself so that the faux snow would stick to that as well, so that it looked like there was snow all along the trees and the snowmen. Lastly, I'm just going to slip that backing right back in, and that is it for this one. I think this turned out so cute, and I love the shadow box effect to it. I picked up a couple more of these, so definitely stay tuned for future DIYs where I'm going to use these, because I think that they are so much fun. I have a piece of scrap wood. It's 8.5 by 11.5 inches. I'm going to start by painting the entire thing with my Waverly chalk paint in white, and I just did one good coat. Next, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and a chip brush that actually comes from the Dollar Tree. I always get questions about what chip brushes that I use. I use the one from the Dollar Tree in the automotive section. I think they work really great. And I'm just going to do a dry brushing technique where I dab my brush into the wax and then dab the majority off, and then just brush very lightly along all of the edges, top and bottom, and all the sides, and then I very lightly go through the entire front of my sign. I also took some copper rub and buff that I also found from Hobby Lobby, and I took it on a little sponge, almost like a makeup applicator, and I'm going to buff this along all of the edges. I wanted this to look very worn. We're trying to make this look like old paper, so I did my best to make this look aged and worn out on all the corners. Next, we're going to wax our surface. This is the Couture Surface Wax. I always have links for this down in my description box. I get a lot of questions about the wax that I use, and I get it from Couture. So like I said, I always have a link down in my description box for that. And I do this to help prevent bleeding when I use my Couture transfers. So I grabbed this transfer. It's the Oh Holy Night transfer, and it has the music sheet on one side. That is the side I'm going to be using. I'm going to put it on my sign and try to center it as best as I can. And then I'm going to take my chalk paint in Velvet and I'm going to run this along the entire thing. Now, I am not the fastest chalker in the world, so what I like to do when I'm chalking bigger transfers like this is pull up the transfer as I'm chalking. So once I have a little bit done on one side, I'll start slowly peeling up the other side so that the chalk paste isn't drying to the transfer as I'm trying to get my project done. And I just do that process while I chalk the entire thing. And that is all we're going to do for this DIY. This is super, super easy and simple. And I think this turned out so fun. I love it sitting on a shelf with all my other Christmas decor. It's very neutral, very farmhouse. And I just love the look of it combined with all of my other Christmas decor. For this DIY, I grabbed this little sled from Walmart. It was $5 and it was located in their little section towards the front, almost like the Bullseye's Playground of Target, but Walmart's version, that's where it was at. And I'm going to make this very simple. I just wanted to redo it. I know it's already a neutral color and you could leave it like that, but I wanted it this green color. This is Waverly's Chalk Paint and Moss, and I gave the entire thing 2 good coats of that paint. I wanted to make sure the black was covered up as well as the star on the front. Once the green paint is completely dry, I'm going to take my Waverly Wax and Antique on a chip brush. I'm going to heavily distress the bottom portion of the sled. And for the other parts of the sled, I'm going to go a little bit more light-handed, but I wanted this sled to look worn. I wanted it to look like it was wood and it'd been painted green, and then some of the green paint was chipping off. So I just was going for that very farmhouse rustic look to it. I dabbed my brush along the front in several different places just to try to make it look really worn. And then I had some of this rope-like ribbon that came from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to string that through the holes in the sled. I tied 2 double knots to each end, and with the rope pulled down to the front, I also tied that in a knot. I debated adding some wooden snowflakes to it, but I ended up just leaving it as is because I think it looks like a really fun piece paired with all of the other Christmas decor that I made. I grabbed these acrylic ornaments that come from Hobby Lobby. They are $4.99 on sale, 50% off, and I believe you got them in a pack of 8. And they have a clear little plastic on them that you can just remove. I grabbed 3 of these, and I am going to do just a really simple kind of ornament with them. I'm going to start by adding some paint to the back, and I don't know if you've seen those acrylic ornaments with kind of like the streaky paint on the back. That's what I was going for in this. So I'm going to do red on one, white on the other, and then green on the third. And I just did this very messily just to try to get that streaky paint look effect on the back. Next, I'm going to take this Couture transfer. These are the Christmas minis that I think look so adorable. And I took 3 of these and I am going to fuzz them really, really well to make sure that they're not going to stick too much to these acrylic ornaments. You don't want your transfers to stick so much that they end up stretching when you take them off. So for glass or acrylic or, hard surfaces like that, I like to make sure that I am fuzzing really, really well. And then I will add my transfers down on top of there. And I just add a transfer to all 3 of my ornaments. I'm going to go in with the chalk paste in black for all 3. And I just add the chalk paste on with my squeegee and then remove the transfer. And I do that for all 3 of my ornaments. Now that that is done, I have these beaded wreaths that came from Hobby Lobby. They were $3.99 on sale for $2. So I just removed the twine that came on the beaded wreaths and strung that through my acrylic ornaments, strung it around the beaded wreath again, tied a knot at the top, and that is all I'm going to do for this DIY. I think these look so cute and they would look adorable hanging on a tree. I don't have mine up quite yet, but as soon as I do, I'm gonna throw these on there because I think these are so much fun, and it was so easy and simple to make. Took me, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. And that's it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let me know which project was your favorite in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!